Greetings, my name is Michael Cook. I'm an application developer, design artist, and system engineer. And in this particular video, I'm going to be covering the Q3A-Live Map Development Kit Plus, Part 5. So over the last month, I've been very heavily invested in updating this. I made a couple of episodes back in July, and I lost some of the code that I wrote, and I got frustrated by it, so I had to rebuild a lot of the stuff that I wrote. In this particular video, I'm going to be covering some of the stuff that I've changed. I've implemented some C# stuff, which is right here. That way I could take advantage of some of the stuff that PowerShell can't do with event handling or handling events with the GUI. So this is going to load right now, and let me talk about it once it comes up. You're going to see some log entries coming up in the console here, which is basically priming the application so that the GUI will be able to drive all the code behind. So here is a new version of this panel here. Now, if you're running this for the first time, all of this stuff is going to be set to not set, and then whenever you set this, it's going to save it to the registry. I'm not going to cover that in this particular video because I wound up deleting a bunch of my logs when I uninstalled it, when I've tested that. So I'm not going to do that right now. But as I anticipated, I would want to add some more dependencies here, or at least increase their functionality so you could install stuff. I did feature this original concept back in October of 2024. There's a lot of changes that have been made to it so far, as you can see visually. Now, if I want to select this particular game, it's going to save it to the registry. If I want to use that particular editor, I'm going to select that here. I may or may not change some of the stuff here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to wind up continuing to change stuff, but yeah, all of these applications here or dependencies can be installed from this interface. Although it's not wired up right now, I have to put that back in. So anyway, this workspace tab, when you go to enter in a workspace, it's going to create a workspace log. So as you can see here, you can see all the times that I've used this application to package a particular PK3. And yeah, I haven't worked on any of the maps since back in October, but that's mainly because I've been working on this or just screwing around in Quake Live. I spend a lot of time playing that. If I go to the output tab, and then I can see all the folders that are in the workspace tab, and I have to fix something with this so that this number includes the files that are in that directory, but I'm not going to do that now, and it's kind of it's not important for me to do that right this second. The most of the work that I've done over the last month or so is implementing this tab, replacing the map panel that used to be in the last version. And the last, I don't know, week or two is basically adding this resource tab and all the stuff that's in it. I'll cover that in a second. And then this select tab and edit tab. These are the only ones that I'm really going to feature because I haven't implemented any of the stuff that is in the prior iteration of this program in these tabs, or really in that one. But ultimately, at some point, all of these are going to have the rest of the stuff in it, and it's going to look a lot like these tabs here. So I want to demonstrate what's going on here. So if I click here and I type in a path to, let's say, G20K pack 0-beta.pk3, and if I hit this, what's going to do is it's going to go through that archive and it's going to extract all the shaders and textures so that they can be referenced from the map panel, which I'll show in a minute. I am going to implement some more tabs here to extract other stuff like scripts, sounds. Not the highest priority, those are pretty easy to do. Now with the shader tab, the spacing here is off kilter a little bit because of these combo boxes. I had a checkbox, but they weren't centering, or they weren't they didn't look the way that I wanted them to. But this doesn't need to extract anything from the PK3, and then you can actually look at some of this stuff. When it pulls this script in, it'll reparse everything. It'll remove all the comments and any spaces, and it'll format it the way that I like it to be formatted, which can be seen right here. So let's say that I want to select all of that, right? And I go here. Then I'll be able to quickly get around stuff that's in the shader and make changes to it. Yeah, sort of touching on some of what Q3A-SE does. Why don't I show that off, actually? Why don't I? So this is Q3A-SE. Now if I say this shader right here, you can see all this stuff here, right? You're able to see a visual representation of a lot of these textures. These are all textures that are used in a map that I recently made called Inspired, but I'm also working on some maps from Quake 2, and went through quite a process of extracting files from Quake 2 in order to upscale them and polish them and implement them as shaders. Couple of videos, 3 videos that I made recently. One is Q2DM5, the pits. Another is Q2DM7, the Slimy Place. And a third is the Smelter, which is a Quake 2 CTF map. Those are all Quake 2 CTF maps, and I wanted to bring them into Quake Live. But before I continue working on all those, I wanted to get this program working. So now that I have all those, it also extracts all the texture references as well. As you can see, none of them say that they're used yet, which I will, that's sort of what I had to give myself a cutoff point where I wanted to demonstrate something today, and that will be working the next time that I have make a new video of this. So anyway, let's get to some more critical stuff. Right, these resources are here so that any of the maps that I select will be able to find the resources that it needs. So let's say Breakthrough. Breakthrough is a part of the BFG 20K map pack. I want to add that, and then I'm also going to add our CTF2, which is made by Rough Rider, which is a guy that I play with on White Lightning quite a lot. And yeah, let's say I want those 2 maps there, and I click Assign. Now I'll carry it over to the Edit tab. And as you can see, they're filtered out in this view. Right, if I want to close it, I click Close and then type that thing back in. C drive / program files x86 / Quake 3 arena / base Q3 / maps. And I click Open. I can do it again. Well, that's something I haven't tested fully quite yet, but the items are still here, and this is where a lot of time and effort is going into. So as you can see here, there's nothing for the source property, so it is automatically looking into the workspace for something that matches that name. So I'm going to click Assign, right? All the references within this particular map are going to show as missing because I still have to implement stuff from the resource panel. But if you look at like that, you can see that in the resource panel. What is it? BFG20K banner flag green. BFG20K banner flag green. So it's there, all right? And then once you set that, it's going to toggle these settings, and then these will all show correctly. So let me show you this, something that definitely works right now. Rough Rider had given me his map file, so I didn't have to decompile it, and I was able to sculpt a lot of this around his map archive a few months ago, back in August, and then spent a fair amount of time figuring out how to parse the map file into objects so that it can extract these references. And then anything that's in a default shader is going to have that checkbox, and it's not going to further check anything else. But these are not default, and Some of them will say they're a texture because they're part of the texture files. So anything that's a texture will be in this list. Anything that is a shader will be in this, right? So a similar panel to what's here. And then virtual means that it is in the shader file, but it's not a texture, and it's yeah, sometimes you can have something like this, right? And it's a virtual texture or shader. It doesn't exist. However, the shader for that, bounce blue, unified bounce blue. So in this, there's no texture file for that, but there is subshaders here. Subshaders are basically images that are mapped, or they're an editor image or a light image, or they're mapped or clamp mapped, which at some point I'll wind up explaining that further. Once I get all of this complete, I'll do like a shader tutorial, so to speak, show people how to use Q3A in addition to this utility, right? But what else here was, yeah, so and then this stands for subshader. So it may not be it is a texture, and it'll be a subshader. And if it's a texture, if it's in the texture list, it'll definitely show up here. Now, right now, this is looking a lot like the original version of the utility. It will basically parse out a bunch of information from the file name or the long name, and that's in the code behind, which I'm not going to feature any of that in this video. But as you can see, I could go through some of these tabs here and start to get into like what things look like in the hierarchy or when they're filtered. I may be able to get all of these tabs to be in this and then just have like a similar to, where is this? Similar to where I would type something right here, or just change this toggle here, and then it would find what I'm looking for. I don't have any of this wired up, but it'll look like this. I might do that. I'm not certain if I'm going to do that or not. So then the map files that are there, the BSP and the AAS file, it'll tell you when that file was last modified. And basically all these tabs do. If I click on the level shot, it'll show that here. Now, there is a way for this to load up a little bit faster, but when you do that, it locks the file. So rather than to lock the file, you can use the memory stream and read the file, and then it can change whatever image is showing up. So if I go over to breakthrough, yeah, as you can see, I can like go from one item to the next, and then it'll repopulate everything in all of these sub panels. But yeah, level shot for breakthrough is right there. The preview image is basically what shows up on the call vote screen in Quake Live. Right, and then it'll have the arena file. So in Quake Live, you really don't need much more than this. You want the map name you want the map field to reference the BSP file and the AAS file. They have to have the same name, and then the long name will be the title when it's showing up on the screen. And then the type is basically the modes of play that the map supports. So this is free for all, this is freeze tags, clan arena, and duel. So at some point I will have some other functions here on this panel where using the interface it'll create this. But that's a little bit further down the road, hasn't been a priority. And then you got stuff for the model folder. That's the only one that's really referenced there. But you know, if you look in the shader here, this is actually a model shader, so I have to figure out how to implement that as well. And then the sound files. Sometimes the sound files are not referenced, so they need to show up here if they're not referenced. Like if they're not part of the main game and they're referenced, they need to be here. Otherwise, it'll make a ding, 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 ding sound. It's really annoying. And then also the music. But you know, I don't think a lot of people play the game with music on. It's just there as kind of like, hey, it's there. If you want to add it, you can. And yeah, that's about it for this particular video. Trying to think of anything else I could demonstrate here. You know what? I could probably show off some of the code behind here. I like to do this part the most because this is like I spend a lot of time working on the code behind as well as opening up Visual Studio Code, or not Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio. And then when I write the code behind, I have to write the XAML so that the code behind can target some of the stuff that's in the XAML or WPF application, whatever you want to call it. It is some combination of WPF and PowerShell and XAML. So anyway, XAML works really well with C#. And you know, I do know how to write some C#, but I try to avoid it when I'm working with PowerShell, because every time that I use this add type thing and I need to edit something in the C# file, I have to close the terminal and then reopen it and then load everything up again. Whereas in straight up PowerShell, I can just highlight everything and then run it. So anyway, in this panel here, we've got the XAML. I've made the window a little bit larger than it was in the last few iterations. I keep having to do that for one reason or another. But yeah, this is how I go about it. So let's say we go to the assignment tab here and we want to see what this box here does. So I'm going to switch that and then collapse that. So all this XAML right here, every single item that needs to be controlled by the interface has to have a name. And then also, like, I spend a fair amount of time using these grid rows. You could also use like stack panel, but I don't like that as much. And you could also use dock panel, which I've never really used dock panel, but I have seen like examples of it. So anyway, a lot of this stuff needs to be updated. A lot of template type stuff. Like I'll take a data grid from one area and then I'll copy it below, but it'll still have old information that I need to update. I won't get into all of that in this particular video, but yeah, this is what I do. Like anytime that I'm making changes to the code behind and then I realize that I need to implement something new, then I wind up going back and forth between the two. And then, you know, adding in like writing C# and stuff is just kind of overwhelming. Although I'm kind of like getting back into the hang of it. It's not like I'm totally foreign to using this stuff, but yeah, had to go through the theme settings and get it to look the way that I wanted. Yeah, very similar code structure. And one thing that's helping me do this is using Copilot to be able to take some of my PowerShell classes. Like I'll take this and I'll ask Copilot to convert it into C# if I don't know how to do it. And then I start ordering stuff around or changing the order. But like I said, I'm less likely to do that unless I know I have something that works and it's not going to break or whatever. So yeah, here's the code behind. Talk about some of this stuff. The assignment panel, or the assignment list object. So assignment.resource, you can see I've got that there, output. And you know, did I actually show that one part off where I just select it from the GUI? By using that control reload, it just reloads the interface. It's not going to go through and repopulate all the stuff when it was priming, which helps me when I'm developing this. It's not going to refresh every single component or whatever. But yeah, let's see. I'm going to hit browse. Yeah, I think I'm not sure if I showed this off. But yeah, I do that, right? And then that's a PK3, but it'll also handle like a directory. So Q2H3. And I'll add that. All right, and then that actually produced a whole bunch of information when I loaded. And then I can look through, you know, figure out what I need and what I don't. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to show that off real quick. Go to assignment again. So I've got the resource, output, right, 0. And then I can go through shader. The asset is going to be basically an object that parses the information I need it in a manner that I need it to be, and then file. All right, and then the file, like you can see that I have objects nested within objects within objects, which is sort of the part where you can lose your mind trying to order stuff around the right way. But yeah, this is basically the shader file parsed the way that I like it to, and then it'll take all of that and then convert all of those individual shader reference items. Like right here, that's a shader item as part of a shader file. But if I go to that, then it'll say, okay, so is it a texture, is it a virtual, is it referenced? And then I can see the sub shaders. And then assign values. Is default is missing. All right, and then content, I think it just kind of like separates it even further. Everything that I highlighted just now is basically right there. So that'll be useful when I get to a point where I want to replace certain information. So there's going to be a feature that I implement at some point where you can replace all this stuff, all the subshaders. It'll have a list of that. It'll have that, and then you can change the names of it using the GUI, and then it'll go through, and then you'll be able to package it. So there's that. Right, and then output, basically all the files, all the map files in that folder that I had to type in, and then view is basically it's not pertinent to have that for me to demonstrate that, because that is basically what's populating the data grid whenever you change the name. And then also edit. These are the individual map file objects. All right, so then it combines a bunch of the information for the map file, and then it gives you the size, and then it'll give you the content. Let's say I do this map equals that, and I say reference or content. So those are all the individual lines. Those are all the individual lines of the map file. Where is texture? See how you can see all that? So it's parsing all that information out, and it's grabbing whatever is unique. So there's that. And then the references. All right, what I just showed you there, it parses all that stuff out, and then it creates these. And then it'll also make it so that I can reference it that way. All right, and in order to find all this stuff, you need to supply this particular object into the resource list, and then it'll find that reference, and then once it finds the reference, you can change the values and stuff. And then, what the hell? Property. So that'll show you like certain information about the map, like the music, the brush count, the entity count, the name of the map, the author, map, source. So this is basically the folder that I assigned with the GUI, and once it was able to get all of that information and parse everything out, and then separate it, so the map, those are the two files that showed up under the map tab, level shot. Right, and then script. So this doesn't have a shader because it is basically referencing the BFG20K shader. But anyway, once it has all that information, then it can populate to this larger item, map.map, and basically the same information. And then, let's see, arena. Content. And then property. So, yeah, that's basically an object representation of the script. Map.shader. So no shaders, about the texture. No textures either. So that's why it's pretty important for me to have the resource tab so that it can find them there and then reference them. And then when you go to package everything, it'll get everything into the right place. And then you won't have any issues publishing a map. And then once you have it at that point where it is complete and the PK3 is playable and there's no errors, no graphical glitches or whatever, then you can publish it to the Steam Workshop and then other people can play it. So with that being said, yeah, I think that's going to do it. I mean, I should probably talk a little bit more about some of these other properties here. Output for the Radiant. Right, so like the editors, they're GTK Radiant, Net Radiant, and Net Radiant Custom, which I've been using Net Radiant Custom recently. I think it is the best of the three. But if I wanted to add additional editors, or if someone using the program wanted to add additional editors or dependencies, then I need to be able to add that to this. And then it's got to save it to the disk somehow so that it can import whatever items that you wanted to add on top of the templates. So I have been putting a lot of thought to all this stuff. And whenever you go to compile, you know, I can't wait to get the compilation array stuff working, because I think that is probably the coolest part. But, you know, they're over in these scripts that are all the way over here. Yeah, that's the assignment panel. And then compile map assets. Right, but like these scripts that I wrote aren't going to apply to everybody. I had to manually enter certain information in so that it would, you know, make my map pack. And I want to be able to use this tool to be able to make the final version of the map pack. And then once you have all of the maps compiled, the compilation array is going to be able to handle, like, if I want to compile all of my maps back to back, this is what I would use. You know, rather than just to compile one, you can compile multiple, right? Or decompile. At some point, I will have decompilation. That's why the tab is there. And then to package stuff, to get everything into a package and then have no errors. It's a lot of this stuff right here is kind of in one form or another already written in the code bind. I had to take pieces of information from here and then implement it into the graphical user interface. But yeah, that's it. This is basically almost a year ago that I made this script, and I haven't really touched it since. I maybe took some elements from here and then brought it over to these tabs, but you know, at some point I won't need this or this or this. I can get rid of them. Something that I should probably cover real quick. I kind of want to cover the Quake 2 pack stuff, but I'm not going to do that until the extract tab is ready. But let's see. Where the hell is it? Yeah. So something else that I'm working on is being able to convert a Quake 4 map to a Quake 3 map file. But they have different definitions within the map file, and then I have to get into like the nitty-gritty of being able to merge the multiple files that Quake 4 materials reference. You know, Copilot helped me write some, like, all these functions here, but once it gave me the functions and it worked to some extent, then I start to add other classes and then merge some of the information. So at some point I will demonstrate this, as well as, or is it the Quake 2 pack stuff. At some point I'll demonstrate all of that, but at this time that's going to do it for this particular video. Thanks for watching.